Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Ed Brennan, class of '78. Spent almost 20 years in management with U.S. retailers R.H. Macy and Federated Department Stores. He joined DFS in 1997 as Executive VP, Merchandising and Operations for Hawaii, before becoming President of DFS for North America and Hawaii. In 1999, he was named CEO of DFS Group, and in 2001, he was appointed Chairman of the Board. I have taken my MBA students on global business trips to China several times, and we have met with Ed's management team. Our students are always impressed by Ed's transformational leadership and the brilliance of his repositioning strategy that took DFS from being a solely duty-free retailer to the world's leading and very successful luxury retailer for international travelers. DFS also has an outstanding method of mentoring, training, and nurturing talent in the organization. I'd love to send boatloads of my students to experience the DFS way. Ed retired in 2012, but his legacy there will remain. In speaking to the employees in DFS, you know that Ed is not just respected as a transformative leader, but one who is much loved as well. That says a lot for the kind of person and leader he is. He sits on the board of Onboard Media, Starboard Inc., DFS Group, and several others in the travel industry. Ed is the co-founder and chairman of the Hand in Hand for Haiti charity. Under the guidance of Ed, Hand in Hand for Haiti has built a world-class education facility in one of the poorest countries in the world, breaking the cycle of poverty one child at a time. Or, in Ed's case, 700 plus children at a time. I still remember the day, May 2010, when Ed described to me how he met Sister Mary, the Superior General of the Missionaries of Charity. It is a story that is etched in my heart. I hope Ed tells you this story tonight. It is a testimony that the hand of God is working among us. And when you know Ed Brennan, alumni class of 1978, and what he does in Haiti, you know he has the heart of Vincent. Ed, I am so happy that our paths have finally crossed. And on behalf of Niagara University, I want to say to you and your wife, Debbie, thank you for being with us, and welcome home to Niagara University. Please welcome Ed Brennan, class of '78.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Well, I got to tell you, it is pretty strange to be back here and standing in front of all of you. I'm not sure how 35 years passed so quickly, but I can remember vividly my 4 years at Niagara. I started here in 1974. You can see me there in front of house number 2. It was my senior year. And you can see my beautiful bride here on the right, Debbie Skiff Brennan, who's over in the front row there. We've been married for 35 years and met here at Niagara. I sincerely hope that you all have a similar experience to what I enjoyed at Niagara. Debbie and I have a group of friends that is 25 that are really close, 40 that are extended friends. We see the group of 25 friends about every 2 or 3 years. Interestingly, the group of 25 friends that we have, some married classmates from Niagara, other married other friends, but of 25 couples, only 2 couples that are divorced. And so in today's society where we look at divorce being 50%, there was something about the selection process at Niagara University in 1973, leading into the 1974 class, that our group had just similar values. And I credit a lot of that certainly to the university and to the strong bond that we all have as friends. And I hope that you all have that as you leave Niagara in the years ahead. Because as you go through life, and I'm going to talk about some of the adversities that we've gone through, life is not easy. And you need a close circle of friends to be able to help you through some of the challenges that you face. So my time at Niagara, I was in O'Shea on the 8th floor, 801. There's still a big chip out of the door. That was one of the problems that I had here in my freshman year. Second year, I was on the 5th floor of O'Shea. For third year, I was in O'Donoghue. And then fourth year here shown, I was on the House 2 in Varsity Village. My classmates tell me frequently that I was the lowest level of our class. So that I was definitely down in the bottom tier of our class. So I don't know that I can really debate that with them, so I just let them say that. But my time here at Niagara was balanced. I worked quite a bit. I worked for a factory in downtown Buffalo. So I was the guy that was leaving around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and coming back around 10 or 11 in the evening. I had a special pass at that time to be able to get back on campus. And as my friends were totally crazy in the dorm, doing all the natural things that I'm sure you guys still do here at the university. As Father Sy said, we paid 10 cents a beer. And we typically would go into the Rathskeller. We would put $1 on the end of the bar at the beginning of the night. We would drink all night, and then we'd go back and we'd pick up our $1 at the end of the night, so our drinks were pretty much free at the Rathskeller. So it's probably why they closed that, and it's no longer available to you guys. So, but thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be in front of such a large group, and I appreciate you listening to Debbie and my story. Philanthropy. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach philanthropy, and Debbie and I have done it in really 2 phases. The first phase that we did was really participating within organizations that were out there. We started very young. When we left Niagara, we got married a year later and moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and I started for a very small retailer. And one of the things that we worked on was we worked with Junior Achievement, which was underprivileged kids, trying to teach them a bit about business. We spent 3 years in Memphis, and I was a hard-charging executive. I mean, I had one dream in life, and that was one day I was going to run a company. In fact, Debbie asked me when we were on campus one day, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, there's only one thing. I want to run a company one day. She said, no, really, what do you want to do? I see how you act around your friends in school. Really, do you think you're going to be able to do that? And I said, no, that was my focus. And so we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. We did some work with Junior Achievement. And at the end of 3 years of working with a small retailer, they called me into the office one day and said, Ed, you're a bit too much of a hard-charging person. We really don't think we need your services any longer. And so they parted ways with me. So life is all about a series of ups and downs, and while we've had good success and we've done some great things business-wise, it's not always that easy. And philanthropy is the same way. Philanthropy takes a lot of work. We started with Junior Achievement. We did quite a bit of work with the Fresh Air Fund, which places kids in inner city into families for a summer program. We had a wonderful experience with a young man out of New York City. We were living in Connecticut at the time. And then we started a respite center with my sister, who had a son who was born, that was my godchild, born with severe disabilities, lived for 11 years, passed away, and my sister started a respite center that we spent quite a bit of time and still do today, a respite center that takes care of over 200 families in Boston. But each of these very different experiences. Then as you go through life, you never know what's going to affect you. And for myself, when I turned 44 years old, I was living in San Francisco at the time, doing quite a bit of work in China. I can remember somebody saying to me at one point, "Oh, Ed, be very careful. When you turn 44, 44 in Chinese means death, death." That's a very bad year for a lot of people. And for me, it presented one of the biggest challenges of my life because I was diagnosed with cancer. and went through a year, had surgery, went through my treatments. But for me, it really changed my hard-driving personality a bit. You know, I was running a big company, running duty-free shoppers, going through quite a bit of transition with them and some challenging times. But I made the commitment at that point to my family and our 3 boys that I would continue, if God gave me the chance and I recovered from the cancer that I had, that I was going to do something different. And at age 55, I was going to stop whatever I was doing, and I was going to focus on giving back, and focus on family, and focus on doing something different. So that was a commitment that I made at 44. In 2007, I show a picture of my dad here. My dad was my best friend. And my dad did some great things in the world, ran a couple of big companies. He was the chairman of the board for DePaul University, Ascension School in Chicago. Did quite a bit of work with Father Holtschneider, who was a graduate of Niagara and the current president of DePaul. And in 2007, my dad passed away from cancer. And I had, as I said, I had a wonderful relationship with him. And a couple of days before he died, I was with him, lived in Chicago. And I said to my dad, you know, if you had life to do over again, what's one thing that you would do differently? And my dad was a great thinker. And so he was in bed, I was sitting next to him, and he thought for about 20 minutes. And I thought, oh boy, I'm really not sure what he's going to say, what he comes up with, how he was going to change his life. But he said to me, he said, Eddie, the one thing that I would have changed is I did a lot of philanthropic work over the years. And I had people constantly calling me, because he had quite success in his life. And he said, I was always writing checks. You know, people wanted $1,000 for this, or wanted a contribution for a campaign. He said, I had a very difficult time saying no, so I supported a lot of different charities. He said, if I had one thing to do over in my life, I would have started a charity from the beginning. I would have had something that I owned. It was my idea. I was held accountable for it, and I did everything involved in that charity. So that was in December of 2007 that my dad passed away. So I thought about that for years, and as I was coming up on thinking about my retirement, knowing that the years were coming closer, Debbie and I talked about it all the time. What do we want to do? We knew we wanted to do something with kids, because the things leading up to this, we've done everything about kids, whether it was the Fresh Air Fund, a school for underprivileged kids with disabilities. So, you know, we started really to focus on giving back. And before I get into the big idea of what we've worked on, I have a quote here from Sister Mother Teresa, because I don't want you, the idea that I'm going to present is a big one, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something. You can't start small and have it lead up to something big. And a very famous quote from Sister Mother Teresa, you know, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And you have to remember that, because there's so many people in this world that have needs. And it's the small things that you do that make the biggest difference. So for us, you know, what happened on January 12th, 2010? We were away from Hong Kong in New York. The earthquake hit Haiti. And if you remember the coverage that CNN did on the earthquake, it was just tremendous. I mean, they were there, they covered it closely. You know, the numbers were just huge in terms of the number of people who were trapped in buildings that they were trying to find. You know, in the final estimate, you know, 3.5 million people living in the city of Port-au-Prince where the earthquake hit, just outside of Port-au-Prince, and an estimated 200,000 lives that were lost. And so sitting in our house in New York, we made the decision to get off our butt and said, why don't we take a trip? Why don't we go down to Haiti and just see what is the need? You know, what can we do in a small way to try to help Haiti? And so we did quite a bit of research, just, you know, what's happened in Haiti. And, you know, here are just a couple of numbers. You know, small country, population of 10 million. 78% of the people only make $2 a day. 55% are illiterate. 50% of the kids go to school, which says 50% don't, and only 2% graduate with a high school diploma. So one of the first things that we did, understanding the need that Haiti had, was reached out to a couple of friends. And one very close friend that I have who runs one of the big divisions for Estee Lauder out of New York, his wife is Haitian. And so we all started talking about what can we do for Haiti, and decided the most important thing was to travel. Let's travel and go through Haiti. And so Haiti is pretty much a small country. After the earthquake, there was huge devastation in Haiti. We traveled by pickup truck. We traveled in broken down cars. I mean, you really, in the first couple of trips that we went down there, you had a very, very difficult time in getting around. On one of our later trips, the second or third trip that we made, it was still early after the earthquake, we decided that we wanted to go to some of the southern tier cities. And we were working on this idea of education for the poor, that it was going to be too easy to just write a check to American Red Cross, or to one of the relief agencies that was working in Haiti. That was the easy way out. So our original vision was, let's focus on education. Let's look at potentially building a small school in Haiti. A school that would have somewhere between 25 to 50 children, and could be from 6-year-old up to 12-year-old. And so on one of our later trips, as I was getting into, we decided we wanted to take a tour of the southern part of Haiti. So we hired a small, old, rickety plane. And we flew down on the first day down to Jacmel, which is in the very south of Haiti. We landed at an airport, a commercial airport that had been closed because of the earthquake. And we went out to see one of the schools that we wanted to look at potentially modeling. Spent the day at the school, came back to the airport. When we came back to the airport, there was a huddle of sisters, all at this airport that was closed. And our plane was sitting. We had about 10 people within our group. And I walked over to the sisters to say, sisters, what are you doing? The airport is closed. And they said, well, we've been waiting for an angel to come because we need to go to Lakai, which is another city in the south. And they said, where are you going today? And I said, well, we might be your angel because we're going to Lakai. And there were 20 sisters that were there. And I said, we can't take 20 sisters, but we could probably take 10 of you to Lakai. And so the sisters were in Haiti post the earthquake, really to try to take care of the people. And some of the stories from what they had to do were just absolutely horrific. So we flew to Lakai, and we dropped the sisters off. We were going to meet with some government officials to look at potentially building a school there. And one of the sisters said to me on the plane, she said, now where are you going after you fly to Lakai? And I said, well, at night, somewhere around 6 or 7, we're going to fly back to Port-au-Prince. She said, well, is there any way that you would allow us to fly with you? And I said, sure, there's no problem. So we went off to our group of meetings, spent the day in Lakai. Didn't really have much success in trying to sell our idea of building a school in that particular area. And we came back after our days, meetings, and walked into this tiny airport. And now the 10 sisters that we had brought multiplied into 100 sisters that were all sitting and occupied the entire lobby of the Lakai airport. So Debbie and I looked at each other and said, what have we missed? And one of the sisters whom I had sat with on the plane had a very nice conversation just about life in general, is holding court in the middle of the airport. So I went over to one of the sisters and I said, what have we missed? Who is this sister? And she said, well, Ed, that's Sister Mary Prima. Sister Mary replaced Sister Mother Teresa. And she's here, on her mission work. And so it was just the most incredible thing to watch her holding court and talking with all the sisters and the smiles, despite all the devastation that was going on in Haiti. So on the plane ride back, I sat next to Sister Mary. And Sister Mary, started to ask me a lot more questions in terms of, excuse me, I'm going to get a glass of water. So Sister Mary started to ask, Ed, what is your vision? And so I talked about, we're talking about a school that is going to be 25 kids to, maybe 50 kids. And she said, oh, Ed, you need to think bigger. Haiti needs you, please. And she grabbed my arm and said, please think bigger. Build a school that accomplishes more, touches more kids. And so we set out on a mission after we dropped Sister Mary off to think bigger. And so what I'll present to you is what we have built now. So the vision for our school is a school that is sustainable. When we started, we did not want to build a school that we were going to hand off to somebody else. We built a school that we plan to run into the indefinite future. As long as we're capable, we will be running this school. We want a school that is world-class, both in terms of academics and athletics. The one thing that we've learned in Haiti, particularly with the girls, is their self-esteem is incredibly low. The women in Haiti have been abused for many, many generations. And so we have a big, big focus on children, female, athletics, and trying to improve their self-esteem. And the last thing is we are involved in every detail. There's nothing that we leave to chance. We are there. We travel to Haiti every 6 to 8 weeks. We are very hands-on with our school. So the school is called Lycée Jean-Baptiste Poit du Sable. We decided that we couldn't name our school after a charity, which is our charity name is Hand in Hand for Haiti. Jean-Baptiste he's probably the most famous native from St. Mark. He's credited as being the founder of Chicago. So our plan is an ambitious plan for our school. We start our kids at 3 years old, and we plan to have our kids go all the way through high school. So graduate with what's called in the French system their baccalaureate. We have 25 students per class. We have 2 classes per grade. We started with 150 students. We're in our 3rd year right now, so we're at 250 students. And each year, we add 50 students at the 3-year-old level. That presents big challenges because kids who are 3 are really very, very young to be going to school. The focus for us is at 3 years old, kids who are malnourished, their brain starts to lose their learning capability. So we had a choice. We could either start at 3 and ensure that their malnutrition was resolved, or wait and take the risk and bring the kids in at 4 and 5. So we focused on 3 years old. Our school is a free school, so there's no charge for anything. And the school is for the neediest kids in Haiti, for the poorest. This is not a school that's built for the wealthy. We give 2 meals per day. I'll talk a little bit about that. We have a library, a music room, an art center, and we have a clinic. And I've showed a couple of pictures here. These are early pictures of when we started to build our campus. We're on a 35-acre piece of property, so we have quite a bit of space to be able to do the things that we want to do. The key priority for us is world-class education. And for those of you that are in the education program and understand building a curriculum, the curriculum that we're working on is incredibly complicated. The local language in Haiti is Creole. We're teaching French and English. We're teaching French and English to kids that go home and don't have parents that understand French and English. So it's incredibly complicated for us. We're dealing in a Haitian system, and our kids have to pass tests in Creole for us to keep our accreditation. So while we focus on French and English, we do have to teach Creole at the same time. So the benefit for our kids, when they graduate, they're going to know 3 languages. The challenge for us is getting them up to the levels that we want to get them up to in proficiency in those 3 languages. So I was in Haiti last week working on this, and we're constantly tweaking our curriculum to make sure that we're going to accomplish that. These are the kids. They are the most precious kids. I mean, they come to school in the morning. They get off the bus at 6:30 in the morning. and they have the highest energy levels that you can imagine. They are so excited about education. They come dressed pristine. In one of the most poorest countries in the world, they come, their clothes are clean and crisp. We give them 2 uniforms so they can constantly launder one. You can see the girls with the ribbons in their hair, and all that they want is to learn. They just want the gift of education. The second priority that we have is sports. And this is a picture that I took last week. We are building a world-class sports complex. Artificial turf, 6-lane track, 2 volleyball courts, a basketball court, all the things that go with track and field, high jump. We're putting significant effort behind our sports, so our kids have the opportunity for both. And you can just see, I mean, Haiti is a beautiful country. I mean, there's so much poverty that is there, but as you look at the hills and the mountains, it's really just a spectacular place to visit. So the other priorities that we have, our meals program, which is served through our cafeteria. We have this building is about 5,000 square feet. We will serve 200,000 meals this coming year. So 200,000 meals is huge. And this will probably be the only food that our kids get through the course of the day. When they go home, their parents will feed their other kids the food that they have, the limited food that they have, knowing that these kids will be able to come back to our school. We transport our kids, so we have buses that pick them up in the city of St. Mark and bring them to the school. So a couple of the challenges that we have in Haiti. The biggest challenge that we have is water. I mean, here we are so spoiled in the U.S. by water. You know, we walk back to our room and we turn on the tap, we grab a glass of water, we take a sip out of bottled water. In Haiti, there is no water. We go through a huge rainy season. Once that rainy season is gone, it is dry as the desert. And so for us, we tried 4 or 5 times to drill water, and we had very little success. We found bracken water, but nothing that was potable water, and certainly not drinking water. So we are working right now to harvest water. We have 50,000 square feet of buildings that we've built for our classrooms, our housing for our teachers, and so we are now harvesting that water off our roofs, and we've worked with the United Nations on a very, very simple filtration system that simply runs the water. We pump it up into this container, and we run the water down through these series of tarps, which are all treated. This isn't drinkable water, but this is water that we can use for toilets, we can use for showers, for our students and so forth. But huge, huge challenge, and something that we certainly shouldn't take for granted in the U.S. And then the second big challenge that we have is power. I mean, Haiti has very limited power. And so we have built our own little power plant. These are 2 pretty big generators. We run on the generators typically 80% of the day. Generators run on diesel fuel. And diesel fuel, of course, we're buying, so it's quite expensive to do. But it's the only way that we can get consistent power. One of the things that we're working on right now is computers for our kids. And we had a donation from IBM for a series of computers. So we have 25 computers that we can't set up because we don't have consistent power. And if we set them up, for sure we're going to blow the circuits in the computers. So we're working on alternative ideas for us so we can get level power to be able to have that available for our kids. So just in conclusion, you know, from my small perspective, you know, philanthropy should start early in one's life. You know, and the fact that you guys are all here is just wonderful to see, because it means that it means something to you. For you to take time out of an evening to come to listen to Father and I and listen to us share our stories. You know, pick an area of focus. You know, I see so many people that try to do so many things, and then they become frustrated because they don't feel that they're making an impact. You know, focus on 1 or 2 things. Focus on 1 or 2 people in need, you know, and give them the gift, you know, that you have, you know, the gift that you can provide for them. So, you know, I say here, start small, and see where life leads you. For Debbie and I, we had no idea. We had no idea that we were going to do something of this significance. We just kind of followed our life and followed our heart, and our heart told us that this is where we should go. And there's so many areas. We decided to focus in Haiti, something outside the U.S. There's certainly plenty of opportunities. Here in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, within the United States. And please remember what Sister Mother Teresa said. It's do the small things with great love. That's what you can all do. That's the gift that you have.